my friends, it's Gabriel with the Last Huntsman channel here, and today I'm going to be doing a comparison slash versus video of the Mossberg MVP Patrol in 5.56 and the Ruger American Ranch in 5.56. Let's check them both out. Alright, so here we have both the Mossberg MVP Patrol in 5.56 and the Ruger American Ranch in 5.56. And both of these rifles can obviously shoot either 5.56 or 223. They both can take an AR-15 magazine, so you know they both come with a 10-round magazine. I could put a 20 or a 30 in both of these. They're both bolt action rifles, so you know you might ask yourself why you would want one of these to begin with. I think they're fun AR-15 alternatives. I kind of like just playing around with a bolt action rifle to begin with, but these could also be a good, what I like to call behind enemy lines type of rifle. So if you're in like a gun control area where a AR-15 is hard to get or unattainable, then these are a pretty good alternative. But let's get into some more detailed specs. Alright, so I'm going to be talking about both the Mossberg MVP Patrol and the Ruger American Ranch. They both have 16-inch barrels. They both are chambered in 5.56 Nato and or 223. They both take AR-15 magazines. The Mossberg has a heavy threaded barrel and came with an A2 flash hider. The Ruger has a medium barrel with it came just with a thread protector, but I put an A1 flash hider on there. The Ruger is 1 1/8 twist. Mossberg is 1 9 twist. The weight, at least according to Mossberg's website, says it's 6.75 pounds, but you know, by the time I put a scope on it and rings and stuff, that's obviously different. And the Ruger says it's right at 6 pounds, but I also have this mag pouch on there that I made and the primary arms scope on there. The Mossberg, right off the bat, it has some iron sights on there, which they're just kind of more traditional sights with fiber optic. To me, that is kind of a big win over the Ruger. I think the Ruger is kind of lacking on that. Obviously, most people just put a scope on it anyways, but I think it's kind of nice to have a backup set of iron sights and a means to shoot the rifle right out of the box. Now the stock, both of them shows a 13-inch length of pole. The Ruger is showing a 13.75 and the Mossberg is showing a 13.25 as far as their website's showing. However, in reality, I'm not really noticing much of a difference. Alright, so while we're still talking about the stock, both of them has a cushioned butt pad. However, the Mossberg, actually, I think the Mossberg has a little bit too much for just a 223 5.56. It's pretty squishy on there. I think the Ruger is just about right. Now, both of these rifles take AR magazines. However, the Ruger American actually has, as you can see, just a push button, almost like an AR-15. Now you do kind of have to break your grip a little bit to reach to it. And the Mossberg MVP actually has a lever underneath that you have to click to access the magazine. Both methods work. I will say I think I like the Ruger a little better on that. But as far as the stock ergonomics, I actually think the Mossberg feels my hand a little better. It just feels like there's just a little extra material around the pistol grip and the forend. The Ruger kind of has this kind of beveled part here, and I got medium-sized hands, but it almost feels like it's too tapered on the Ruger. And also, I will say, not all the Mossbergs do, but some of them do. But I know my Mossberg Scout rifle has a Picatinny rail. This one didn't, but because it's more flat and squared, it was easy to attach a Picatinny rail on the side here, while the Ruger with that beveled end would be very hard to attach any kind of Picatinny rail. So I kind of have to give the Mossberg a little bit of a win on that. We'll talk about the bolt and the action next. Alright, so the actions on both of these, they're both obviously bolt action rifles. I have a lot higher round count through my Mossberg MVP. I've had this for a couple of years now. So, in a sense, this one has kind of smoothed up a little better than the Ruger. But that being said, I've used it and dry fired it and worked with it a lot. Now, one thing I will say that I do like about the Ruger, it does feel very smooth. And I think as I use it more, it's going to slick up a lot more. And I will also say that the bolt on the Ruger with that tri-lug bolt is very heavy duty. The Ruger feels overall more solid than the Mossberg. And I'll show you guys the Mossberg in just a moment here. And another thing to take note on is the ejection port here on the Ruger is actually significantly longer than the Mossberg. We'll check out the Mossberg here. Of course, I'll empty the mag. But there's just a little bit more slop on the Mossberg, and there's a little bit of fluting on the bolt. But as you can see, the bolt is quite a bit smaller than that of the Ruger. We'll compare the bolts side by side. Alright, so here I have the Mossberg MVP bolt and the Ruger American Ranch bolt side by side. As you can see, the Ruger bolt is actually not only, quite significantly thicker and beefier, but it's also a little longer. So the overall action on the Ruger is a little longer. The Mossberg bolt, obviously is fluted, has a little bit bigger knob on it. At least this version does. I've seen a few different versions, but I'm more specifically talking about the Patrol, since it's about the same size and everything as the Ruger American Ranch. Ruger American Ranch, it's more of a polished bolt. It's obviously a lot thicker, a lot bigger and such. Now, some major significant differences is obviously the Ruger is a tri-lug bolt and the Mossberg is just a two-lug bolt. And while the Ruger, what catches the round in the magazine is a full lug, the Mossberg just has this little flipper thing. And before I ever got the Mossberg, that was something that always concerned me. I was kind of always like, man, I don't know how long that's going to last. However, I got at least a couple thousand rounds through this rifle, and it's never given me any problems. So
most of them were steel too, weren't they?
Yeah, I've shot all kinds of different ammos through these, even steel cased, but we'll get into that.
The
later.
Ruger bolt is more Chad though.
The Ruger bolt is more Chad, yes. It definitely looks more Chad. Now I will say the Mossberg, I like the throw and the angle on the Mossberg bolt a little better, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So as far as smoothness goes for both of these rifles, I think that they're both fairly comparable. I know when I first got the Mossberg MVP, it was kind of clunky, and as I've shot it more, it's smoothed up quite a bit, and I've been noticing the same thing with this one. I don't think it's quite as clunky as the Mossberg. Now, when I was talking about the bolts and the bolt angles, as you can see, the Ruger kind of has more of just like your classic hunting rifle style bolt, which doesn't, I mean, it's a Ruger American bolt, basically, which I actually like. It's just fine. Clears the scope well and such, but compared to the Mossberg MVP, I actually feel like I like the bolt knob a little better on the MVP. Has just a little bit more to grab onto. A little bit more Chad on the bolt handle, right? A little bit more Chad.
It's a big knob, but conversely, it's not a thick shaft.
Yeah.
I'm really perplexed by it.
Also, I feel like the angle on this is just a little bit better. Like, I don't know exactly what the throw angle is, but they're both pretty good. I think the Mossberg has a little bit nicer bolt handle, though. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about the safeties and the triggers on both of these rifles. And the Ruger American Ranch has a tang-mounted safety. So if you're used to the Mossberg 500, 590, or even the Ruger American rifles, or Savage rifles, this is going to feel pretty intuitive to you, which I'm kind of a tang-mounted safety fan. I like a tang-mounted safety on a rifle. And as for the Mossberg, it has a very Remington 700 style safety. So it's just a little lever on the side. As you can see. For the triggers, the Ruger has what they call the Ruger Marksman trigger, which just has a little blade on it. I mean, we all know they obviously are kind of all reminiscent of the Savage Accu triggers. But the Ruger Marksman trigger, it's pretty smooth. But I will say the weight on it is a little more than the Mossberg. Now granted, you could adjust any of these, and I haven't adjusted them. I just used them straight out of the box. But the Mossberg Lightning trigger,
You say that's more of a crisp break versus like a rolling effect? I feel like the Ruger just stacks till it lets go.
the Ruger just has a little heavier weight to it. Now that being said, I got like a couple thousand rounds to this rifle versus the Ruger is pretty new. I have a feeling though that both are going to be pretty comparable all said and done. But that's the triggers and the safeties for both of these rifles. So final thing on the bolts for both the MVP and the Ruger is the bolt release. The Mossberg MVP just has a little lever on the side here that you just depress and allows you to pull the bolt out.
How do you get it depressed to the
Well, the Ruger American Ranch is just like every other Ruger American rifle, and it just has a button that kind of angles on the side of the receiver that you just depress.
Same question.
Yeah, same question. So that's the bolt release.
Goddamn ticks are everywhere. It's like Joe Biden on a 6-year-old.
Alright, so I'm going to just do a little bit of shooting with both of these rifles and just kind of see what kind of groupings I can get. Now, this ain't any like official accuracy test, and honestly, I'm not like the best bench shooter in the world. I'm kind of more of a practical shooting type of guy, but I got just 4 different ammos lined up. I'm just going to kind of see what kind of groups I can get. I got I'm going to do 3 shots of Federal. It's just Federal 55 grain. All of these are actually 55 grain. I got some Wolf, some PMC Bronze, and some IMI 556. So we're gonna give 3 shots out of each one of these ammos through both of these rifles. Alright, so this ain't gonna be any like super official accuracy test, and this is about as you know, out on the farm redneck engineering as it gets. But I'm just gonna kind of see what I can get, and automatically the Mossberg is gonna have a bit of an advantage because it has a 3x9 loophole scope on it versus the Ruger has a 1x6 primary arms. But we're just gonna see what we can get. The first ammo I'm gonna try out is some 55 grain Federal bulk. Alright, I'm going to shoot 3 rounds of each. Right now, in the Ruger, I have 3 rounds of just Federal bulk. So I had my buddy Ben, he was nice enough to bring his suppressor. So we're going to try the Ruger American Ranch suppressed here. We're just shooting some Wolf ammo. I oddly feel that the Mossberg has a little bit smoother action than the Ruger. That being said,
okay,
I have a lot more rounds through
all
the
three of those
Mossberg.
felt good.
Alright, so we got the Mossberg MVP Patrol here, and I'm actually quite impressed with the grouping. When I was shooting right at 100 yards, and with just the Federal 55 grain bulk ammo, I got, that's about a ½ inch right there. You know, I don't got my, I don't have my tape measure with me. The Wolf, that's about the grouping I got with that. And granted, I'm using just a bipod on a rickety ass bench, and I'm, you know, shooting fairly quickly, so, you know, I'm not expecting like perfect groups. I could just probably really bag this in and get it a little better. The PMC, it actually did a pretty decent group there. The IMI, I actually think the IMI was worse than the Wolf. I'm not so sure if I'm impressed with that Israeli ammo. We'll move on to the Ruger American Ranch. And while I like the Ruger American Ranch, I actually think I got some better groupings with the Mossberg MVP. I got the Federal bulk. Now, I'm suspecting that this one I pulled. I believe these other two are probably more so of my group. The Wolf, I mean, you know, it's 1.5 inches and it's kind of a string. However, it's also Wolf, so I'm not really expecting much. PMC, that's a solid inch right there. And then IMI, it was pretty terrible actually with the Ruger American Ranch. So overall, I mean, just I'm shooting bulk, mostly bulk 55 grain ammo. You might ask, hey, why don't I try a lot of other kinds? Well, because I don't really stock up on a lot of other kinds of ammo, and I don't want to shoot, you know, too much out here with both of these. And for the most part, most people are only going to have 55 grain bulk ammo anyways, so
you got to use match grade ammo to hit something, you got problems.
Yeah, in my opinion, if you can't shoot decent, you know, groups with just bulk ammo, then you got problems. It's either you or your rifle. So I'm pretty impressed with both of these. Overall, I think I'm going to give it to the Mossberg. I think the Mossberg kind of shot a little better than the Ruger. Now, granted, I think I got a little bit better trigger with the Mossberg. The Mossberg has a 3x9 scope, and I got a lot more rounds through the Mossberg, so that might be a good part of it. But I'll let you all make your decision there. Well, my friends, we're going to wrap this video up. In this video, I compared both the Mossberg MVP Patrol versus the Ruger American Ranch. I think overall, both of these rifles have some pros. Both of these rifles have some cons. I think in some ways the Ruger feels a little bit more solid in action, but in my shooting, I think the MVP slicked up a little easier. Now, granted, I have probably, 10 times the amount of ammo through this one as I do this one, so I'm sure with time and use, this one's going to slick up a little better. But, there's things that I like about both of them, and there's things that I think they can improve on. I think some of the ergonomics on the MVP is a little better. I think the magazine thing latch is a little better on the Ruger. I think the bolt and the action is a little better on the Ruger. I think the angle of the bolt and just the knob itself is a little better on the MVP. Accuracy wise, I think overall they'd be pretty close if I had things more even, but the Mossberg, I do have a higher end scope on the Mossberg than the Ruger, so that's kind of an uneven and little battle there. But trigger out of the box, I think the Mossberg had a little bit better trigger, but I never adjusted this trigger, so there's, you know, a lot to be said there. Which one I'd pick? Honestly, I'd say grab them both if you know, if you wanted to. But honestly, as well, you know, either one's going to serve you well. I kind of like the proportions on the Ruger a little bit better, but both are great rifles, and I'm happy to own both of them. This was a fun video, so get out there, be prepared both physically and spiritually. God bless, and carry on.